Okay, good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. It's 7. We're calling this to order. If you could please stop talking, councillors. Thank you. Okay, so call tonight's regular council meeting to order of Tuesday, April the 11th. I wish to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the territory of the Sauk Nation. Item 3, council, is approval of tonight's agenda to be adopted as circulated, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor McMath. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Meeting minutes is under item 4. We have March 13th regular, March 17th special, the 20th special, 21st special, and 27th special council meetings. So the motion would be that we adopt these minutes as circulated. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor McMath. Any questions or corrections? Some light edits have been already submitted that don't change the content. So we're good to go. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we have 2 delegations this evening. 5.1 is Economic Development in Greater Victoria, presentation by the South Island Prosperity Partnership. So welcome. All delegations are allotted 5 minutes. And so our corporate officer will put on the timer for you so we can just keep our meeting clipping along. So welcome and thank you for being with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me this evening. So my name is Dallas Gislason. I'm with the South Island Prosperity Partnership, which is the region's economic development alliance, which the District of Sauk is a member. I'm joined by my colleague, Christina Clark, who is the Executive Director of the Indigenous Prosperity Center, which is a division of SIP. And she's actually coming back to Council in a few weeks from now to talk about this area of SIP's work. So anyway, I'm delighted to be here in Sauk territory. Sauk Nation is also a member of SIP and a collaborator on our projects. Most recently as a co-founder of the Center for Ocean Applied Sustainable Technologies, or COAST. It's been a while since our last update. So what I'd like to do, obviously we'd like to be out here more frequently now that we're back to more in-person meetings, but we also do have our Municipal Partners Committee, which is frequently attended by Mayor Tate and Councillor La Jeunesse. Also, our AGM is coming up in June, and you're all invited, of course, to attend that. So I'm gonna go over just in a few minutes here, just some background on SIP, just for anyone who's new. And I'll update you on a couple of key areas and then happy to answer questions. And then we'll also be doing some follow-up materials with you as well. So back in February, we hosted an orientation session for newly elected councillors across the region to learn about SIP. And that session was recorded. If anyone wishes to review that, we can send a link to that as well. So SIP was created, of course, by municipal government starting in mid-2015 to serve as a regional alliance with a mandate for economic development vis-a-vis long-term job creation for the next generation. Municipalities agreed to a funding model that would then, would stabilize the organization and then leverage private sector and other institutional funding to keep the organization going. So post-secondaries, nonprofits, etc. SIP launched this entity with 29 of those founding members, and today we're proud to have over 75. Founders also had the foresight to ensure that First Nations were embedded in the alliance as equal voting members. 2 nations were among the founders in 2016, and today all 9 nations within the metro region are engaged with SIP. Fast forwarding a little bit, a lot of our current work actually comes from the role that we took during or the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. So SIP took an immediate role in the region early in the pandemic to create something called the Rising Economy Task Force, which was led by 40 regional leaders, mayors, councillors, business leaders, institutional leaders, and supported by 12 sector committees across all areas of the economy. And that process led to 160 different recommended actions to help our region go from relief to recovery to resilience. And 50 of those, through a streamlined process, were published in something called the Reboot, which was Greater Victoria's Economic Recovery Plan. And a number of those pillars were carried forward by SIP into our current strategic plan, which we're currently entering the last year of actually in this fiscal year. And so 4 pillars of our work. So one is committed leadership and public engagement, which is really about regional capacity to collaborate and work toward a bolder future across the region. The second one is investing in innovation ecosystems, which is really where this Coast initiative I mentioned earlier with Sauk Nation where this coast initiative came from, which is really all about ocean technology, ocean innovation, using regional strengths to put us on a global map. The third area of our work is investing in inclusion in the future workforce. This is where the Indigenous Prosperity Center, of course, will play a role in ensuring that First Nations don't just have a seat at the table, but are also leading and advising on priority projects with regional impact around the region. And the fourth area is something called Tell Our New Story. And this is actually something that all the sectors in the region were telling us that we need to obviously to diversify the economy and tell a story to invite businesses and investors and those that we want to come to the region to basically inform them of this sort of post-pandemic reality and the strengths that our region has in a number of areas, which I won't get into. This year, we're actually going to announce a major initiative in that fourth pillar around regional promotion, which also delivers something we're calling a portfolio of community profiles. And one of those will be focused on the district of Sooke. So just in closing, a couple of points. Later this year, we're obviously going to continue to convene municipal governments around the region. And this year, we're going to be expanding the role of our partners committee to become more about collaborative policymaking and idea sharing across the region. Over the coming weeks, we're actually going to be announcing some additional major funding in support of the Coast Initiative that I mentioned, as well as the Indigenous Prosperity Center. About 2 weeks ago, we announced the first $2 million in leveraged funding. So this is funding that's really wouldn't happen without municipal support. And then in a few days, we're going to be announcing another formal division. So in addition to the Coast and IPC, which is something called the Community Economies Division, which I'll be heading up. And this is really about bringing, supporting the other divisions cross-functionally, but helping to support and serve municipal level economic development around the region. And that's it. So thank you for the opportunity to update you on another thing. I know I probably spoke very fast, but it's municipal governments that form the foundation of all the work that we do, and that's the reason why we can leverage and make major announcements like these multi-million-dollar announcements that we'll be making here in the next few weeks. And as part of that, I would like to request that Sooke continue on as a municipal member of the South Island Prosperity Partnership, and we'll be following up with some formal requests for that. So thank you for your time, and thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Dallas. Is there any brief questions from members of council? Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, at one of the meetings, I think it was in January, I suggested that since many of the municipalities now have community economic development officers, that they should be included in the municipal partners meetings. And I'm just wondering if if they have an open invitation, or how is that going?
Yeah, excellent question. So they don't have an open invitation yet. However, at our next meeting, which is I think next week, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to be opening an opportunity to create a formal terms of reference for that committee, which we've never had. The committee was actually created during the pandemic as a way to have sort of constant month after month communication amongst the municipal governments through our member reps. But now we're actually going to be formalizing the committee. So that's the first time we've ever done that. And when we open that door for the terms of reference, that'll be the opportunity to determine the best way of structuring it, the meeting frequencies, the mandate, some of the formal sort of policymaking stuff that we could explore. And that would include, I think, the municipal level EDOs around the region, of which there are maybe only 5 or 6 in total. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just think it would be valuable to have them at the table so they can participate in the conversation.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think your third visit here. We spurned you in 2015, but we signed up in 2020. Back then in 2020, Bruce Williams told us, or perhaps it was you, that there would be reciprocal memberships with the various chambers of commerce. And I know you've got the Greater Victoria or the Victoria Chamber, but the Sooke Chamber is not a member at this point, I don't think. Is that still part of the plan?
No, the Sooke Chamber is a member of SIP. Yeah, all 5 chambers in the region. So there's
Fantastic.
5 chambers of commerce, and they're all reciprocal members of SIP. Yeah.
Excellent news. Okay. I do note in your strat plan that your municipal partners committee meetings, there would be monthly written progress reports for widespread count. Are those being delivered at this point? Because I've not
Yes.
seen one as of yet.
Yeah, we circulate those usually with the agenda package, so it comes out a few days before the meetings each time, yes.
So that would be up to the council representatives to distribute those to their particular councils.
Yeah, our hope is that they share it however they deem. So it's, we don't suggest that they
Okay.
email it out or put it in a formal package, but it's sort of up to them on how they choose to report. Yeah.
So looking at you two.
Okay, well, anyone can also subscribe to the website and receive automatic updates. So I would encourage you who are interested to also consider doing that because I'm not your secretary.
Wow.
That's how everyone can keep informed on your own. Councillor Pearson.
Through you to thank you for the presentation and being back on council again. And my curiosity is around the extension into the Wandafuca area, because we have not necessarily municipalities, but we have communities, Jordan River, Shirley, and Port Renfrew, and then, you know, the Circle Marine route as part of. So is there any formalized process for contacting and talking to them through the Wandafuca chair, I guess?
That's a really good question. So when SIP was created, we had this idea of the metropolitan area. So the metropolitan areas are the CMAs are defined by Statistics Canada, actually. So the border of the CMA is defined by Stats Canada. The CRD district boundary is much different. It's actually not the metropolitan boundary because it does include the Wandafuca electoral area, as well as some other ones with the Gulf Islands and stuff. I would say SIP is definitely not opposed to collaborating and working on projects with partners outside of the metropolitan area. And we have had a few meetings with a couple of Gulf Island stakeholders on that front. However, it is in a couple of opportunities where it's come up, it's been difficult for them to see, I guess, the direct connection to their own sort of, I would call it like a micro localized economy to the project and where the project might impact them. It's not to say that they wouldn't benefit from collaborating with us, but the way that SIP is funded is the municipal portion of our membership fees are based on a formula. And that formula is based on per capita as in a combination with a percentage of taxation. And so we've never really explored with our members how it would work if you look at electoral districts. And to my understanding, the previous CAO of the CRD wasn't really super interested in engaging in that conversation, but that may have changed with that person no longer there. But yeah, I'd say we're open to it.
Okay, thank you. And so there right now, I guess there's no formalized process to start having discussions with Regional Director Wickham as an example. I think there's some natural opportunities there for this South Island Prosperity Project, but again, it's, you know, there's bureaucracy in the background, it sounds like.
Well, I mean, we're happy to talk to them. We don't have any bureaucracy. We're completely flat. Like we're agile, nimble, all that. It's just the funding side. So our current members would basically need to sort of reopen the membership structure and determine how we would engage with an electoral district that's a non-municipal or a non-First Nation. See what I'm saying? So yeah, we're definitely open to talking with Director Wickham for sure. Yeah.
Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, to the chair, to our guest, you mentioned, flagship initiatives that be launched next week. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? Exactly what it is?
Launch next week.
That way, maybe I misheard you.
Oh, so community economies.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. So SIP is basically structuring itself as 3 divisions. So one division is Coast, which is around the innovation. So that's sort of taking all of our ocean assets and organizing it into an economic engine. So that's Coast. The other one is the Indigenous Prosperity Center, which you'll hear about from Christina, who's here tonight, I think in early May. So that's the Indigenous Economic Development Mandate. So the other division is called Community Economies, and that's really it's this idea that our region is really a portfolio of places. So all these places like Souk and Colwood and Sydney make up what actually is the metropolitan regional economy. And we've never actually created a formal way of working more collaboratively at the local levels and ensuring that, you know, we're making sure that we're hitting all, because you have your own active mandate, which you're developing, right? And so for us to have a formal division that then is responsible for collaborating at that local level, that's what that division is. It's not one project, it's more of a function.
Your flagship announcement is just that, a reorganization into the three groups.
We'll be announcing that. We haven't announced it yet.
Okay,
So
yeah.
you're actually the first municipality to hear that out of my mouth at least, but yeah, we haven't announced it yet.
All right, I was under the impression that there was some sort of bigger announcement, but I just misunderstood. Thank you.
Well, we're also going to be announcing some funding. So in the millions of dollars, but that's not for that initiative. It's a different
Funding for what though?
for the Coast Initiative and the IPC, which is the other two divisions. So that's
Okay.
what we're announcing on the funding side.
All right, I'm just not clear of what you're doing, you know, for our community. We're part of this and I haven't seen anything flow our way. So I don't know whether I'm just premature, you're just getting organized and some things are not. But I thought there was a bit of an announcement there, but that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I'll jump back if
Okay,
you don't mind.
no, then we'll move.
Community portfolio souk. Now, tell me more about that particular.
Yeah, so if you think about a big area of our work is around people and business attraction. So we want to attract targeted sectors, targeted individuals. So for example, I happen to think we need more doctors, right, in the region. So if we think about that from like a sort of a funnel perspective, we want to sell the region, but the region is made up of this portfolio of places. And so we can't just sell the region. We have to actually take people one layer deeper and talk about all the different places that make up. And our region's actually quite diverse. We have rural areas, we have sort of cosmopolitan urban areas and everything in between. And so that's what I'm talking about, is that we've developed these profiles for each municipality that goes into more detail on the strengths of those unique places. And so that's what we've developed, and we do have one for souk. It's just not ready for public viewing yet.
Good news. Okay, and finally, the abattoir study from a couple of years back. I think one of the recommendations was a working group to emerge out of that. Where do things stand with it at this point?
Yeah, good question. So the reference to an abattoir study. So we commissioned a study to look at the need of basically assessing the need of an abattoir in the region. And we've used that study, which is public information, to basically work with stakeholders that would explore setting it up. So we've actually worked with 3 different stakeholders. 2 of them have now, I'm going to say, fallen off for various reasons. There's a current active one that's still looking at, and they're using the study to basically build their business plan. So yeah, we'll hopefully have more to update on that later this year.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time with us today. And if you go to the website, you'll see there's a great little article here, not little, but the Economy Builders Chamber of Commerce is featured on the website. So everyone can enjoy that later. So thank you for your time with us.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
To welcoming your colleague next month. Okay. Okay, thanks, everyone. We'll move on to our second delegation tonight. So I'll welcome Mr. Herb Haldane forward from the Souk Builders Association. And welcome, Mr. Haldane, our corporate officer. We'll put 5 minutes on the timer for
Thank you
you.
very much. Herb Haldane, 3118C Otter Point Road. I'll give you some heads up. So a couple of weeks ago, I went to Victoria Home Builders housing session with Ravi Kalam, the housing minister. I know a bunch of you met with housing and stuff this last week as well. So a bunch of new things are coming up in the fall with regard to trying to get rezones to basically to development groups quicker. And really what came out of the meeting, what I found kind of odd in some cases, because the provincial government believes that it's councils that are causing the backlog. Councils are the ones slowing things down, and councils are the ones making this stuff take a long time. I don't believe that for 1 second. I think if council gets to look at these applications, then council can make decisions a lot quicker than they do, but the applications are taking too long to get to you. So you get pegged with this, well, it took 3 years to get a rezone application through, and it doesn't take 3 years for you guys to get the application through, but it takes 3 years to get it to you. So I'd like to come up with some plans in order to be able to try and make it quicker, easier, simpler. before they come up with this new process, which is going to happen in the fall. And I don't know if they talked about that in your guys' sessions or not, but they plan on using official community plans, and they're going to bypass councils, and they're going to bypass public hearing processes, and they're going to go straight to, if it maps it in your OCP, then that makes it rezonable to whatever your mapping states in the OCP. And then, of course, the language behind all that mapping, which is built into your OCP, now will take precedence over what the public thinks, what councils think, and so on. So public hearings, once they're missed, then you guys don't get your kick at what's going to happen in the future. You know, if the public outcry is to not have a 12-story building in that area, but it says it in the OCP, you're not going to have a choice one way or the other. Right now, we're running into this quicksand idea of expectations to get the rezones to council. And there's a whole bunch of criteria to that. And some of it very legitimate. I sat down with some of your staff there last week. We had a really good meeting. It was as good a meeting as I've had in a long time. So to try and come up with some of these solutions to try and get things to council quicker. We did have some dialogue on that. I hope it goes farther than just the meeting that we'd had, and I hope it starts coming faster, but I have some applications in process and they've been taking some time. But the big, I think, miscommunication over the years has been what council expects in these applications. And last time around, when Norm was still here and dealing with some staff member dialogue we had, was council at the time wants all these huge details built into a rezone process. A lot of the details that would be at a development permit that would happen after the rezone's already passed. And the thing is, with a lot of this rezone stuff, it costs a lot of money to do all these studies, traffic studies, sewer serviceability studies, impact studies with regards to schools, highways, roads, and as well as neighborhoods. So if you can get the rezones to council and they can decide whether or not they allow this, then the applicant or the developer can decide whether or not they're willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do the things the district would want in order to get the application off. And most of them would be, but there's still, the problem is when you're at the rezone stage, there's still no guarantee, at least not until September or the fall, that the rezone is going to go through. So to spend $40,000, $50,000, $75,000 on an application that may or may not make it through the gate, that's a lot of money spent for not knowing. So maybe it's a communication gap between council and staff on what priorities are, or maybe what you guys could set for them as your expectations for applications to come forward to you at this point. And then maybe we can get some of these things out and going. I'd sent an emails some weeks ago asking, to move an application forward. And I want that to happen because I want you to decide. Somebody's still going to come here when the application process is on. Public hearings will still happen. So you get to hear all the information and so on, but can't get it to you until we can get it out of the gate. So I came here tonight to try and cover some of this stuff so that we can get a better communication process going. And communication has already started to happen. And I think we can keep adding on to that. I hope it continues. And to give you some insight, Sooke Builders Association is doing an election this Thursday. We have a meeting in the community hall. So it may not be me in the future, it may be somebody else, but we're going to start communicating more often and we'll have more people involved. So anyhow, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Haldane, and for sharing that with us. We all, those of us that went, took a lot of notes so we can sort of untangle what the announcement means and how it impacts us. And of course, some of this will come out through our development approval review process, which is underway, and some findings coming forward to council. And also for council to determine what is the planning culture, what is the tone direction that we want to have. So some of that is in strategic priority setting, which we parked to get through budget, but we'll be picking up again too. So it's timely that you're here.
Well, and it's important too. I mean, I know you're going to go through an OCP process coming up. That process is more important probably now than ever, considering what the province is going to put in the way of weight on top of that document. So everybody needs to be represented, with regards to that document at this time. So I think you'll find that there'll be a lot of people want to get involved in that. So
No, that's great.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay, council, move on to item 6, report of the chief administrative officer, item 6.1. Over to Ms. Gray, please.
Thank you, your mayor and council. I won't regurgitate everything that's included in the report here. Just wanted to highlight a few things. first being the CAO recruitment. So that the announcement was made about Mr. McInnes not returning to the district in the CAO capacity. Mr. Schaefer's term has ended. So the recruitment process for the next CAO will be beginning shortly. And I just wanted to take a second from the staff perspective to thank Mr. Schaefer and especially Mr. McInnes for everything that they have done and for the district during their time here, and wish Mr. McInnes the best in his health journey. On that note, as was just talked about, strategic planning. So that, as the mayor stated, has been paused for a second here with the budget hopefully winding up in the next couple meetings here. The next focus, I believe, would be for council to complete the strategic planning session. 2024 budget will be coming up very soon, and there will be a lot of priorities and competing demands. So I think staff understanding what council's priorities are going to be is very important at this time in our journey in our history here. Department quarterly updates, starting April 24th. Each department will be providing department quarterly updates to council and the public, anyone who wants to follow along, just to provide a lot more details on what's going on. I think there's a lot of good going on, and it maybe gets lost in a bunch of the noise, and our once a year annual report doesn't quite do it justice. So we're going to try something different and do some quarterly reporting to council, and it'll be a live process, and based on feedback received, we will adjust and amend for future reports. Corporate services will be the first department up on April 24th. Housing Summit, I won't touch on that. I'm sure most of council will address what happened there. As I stated, budget financial plan bylaw is on later on for the agenda for the first 3 readings. Council did a lot of work over the last few months, whittling things down and just getting a bit more information on in another trying year due to inflation and other budgetary pressures. And staff feel like we've got a budget that will allow us to get started on some critical projects, find out get these out tendered, find out what these are actually costing us, so that we'll have a way better picture for 2024 budget planning of where we're at, where the reserves are going to be at, how these projects kind of costs came in, and can be more strategic and long-term in our plans for 2024 and beyond. Year-end audit is just winding up. The auditors will be at the May 8th council meeting to present the results of their audit. No concerns at this stage. OCP is on coming up later today on the agenda to discuss next steps. I won't deep dive too much into the Community Act Dev and Climate Action Plan, as during the quarterly updates, they'll provide further details on that, but just a couple highlights of what they have going on. Of course, our communications coordinator would love to highlight some Earth Week festivities, so those are included there in the public agenda. The last couple pieces would be the RCMP. Again, that is coming up later on the agenda, an FCM proposed resolution that is for council's consideration. So as stated in the report, staff received confirmation that the federal government will not be waiving the retro pay, but they will give municipalities up to 2 years to pay. So even though we have enough accrual set up, as I stated in the report, staff will still be taking the 2 years to pay them back. Just because. So thankfully we have a significant accrual. Any surplus in that accrual will be transferred over to the future policing reserve fund as the annual year ends complete there. So we'll be taking advantage of that option. And the last piece is just on human resources. Just wanted to highlight, so we have currently 5 vacancies on staff. Chief building official is currently posted, building auxiliary or building official auxiliary pools, engineering technologist, general support clerk auxiliary pool, and HR record student. We apply to the federal government for a records or a student grant every year. And so HR is the department that's been asking for a summer project for there. So we're just kind of waiting to hear if we've received this grant or not. 4 competitions were recently completed. The 2 auxiliary parks laborers were just recently hired. They start on April 14th. The fire services emergency program assistant, Julie's vacancy was recently filled with an internal candidate. I'm losing Cassidy, but I'll get over it. So she's going up to the fire department and for the year term there while that position is being solidified, which is why it's just a term position right now. And 2 flex firefighters, I believe, have started today or possibly last week. I think they were doing some orientation today. I saw them around downstairs. And a competition is just finishing for 2 captains. 2 captains are not net new positions. It's just a change in rank based on staffing levels. And I will leave that there. If there's any other questions?
Thank you very much for the report, Ms. Gray. It helps. There's a lot in there. And so it just gives us something, so we're not all trying to write it all down or watching a webcast. So appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions of our CAO? Okay, so we'll look then for a motion to receive the report for information. Moved by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so next is our public question and comment period. So I'd like to invite any members of the public that would like to comment on tonight's agenda. This is your time here, so we just require your name and local government that you reside in, and 2 minutes will be put on the timer for you. For any of the 4 gathered here today. So I'm seeing no movement, so yes, we're good to go on. So thank you for being with us nonetheless. Item 8 is our consent agenda. So that would be that item 8.1 be adopted by general consent. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Comments? No, all in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'd like to remove item G
Oops.
for discussion at the next meeting, please.
Okay, so pulling off item G to go to the next meeting. Okay, so all other items then will be received and filed accordingly. So I'll call the question. All in favor, please. That's unanimous. Unanimous. Thank you. Item G will come to our next regular. Okay, item 9.1, proposed road closure and sale of right of way adjacent to, I can't read that, 6569 Sioux Road. Over to staff, please.
Let her click.
Thank you, your worship. To your worship, the council, the district has received an application to close and remove the highway dedication of a 23 square meter section of the undeveloped road right away of the corner of Goodmere and Lanark in the proposed extension area of Lanark. And this is adjacent to the property at 6569 Sioux Road. I don't know how you can make those bigger. on
This
that
is
screen.
exactly the same map that's in our package,
It is,
right?
it's the
Okay.
same map, it's in the package. So application was received for this road closure. Cannot get this thing to click. I can go over it. So the road closure is in alignment with the criteria that council would use to consider under policy 11.2, any road closure within the district. It's in alignment with a subsequent application for the subject property. It is for the purpose of a future road connection, and it does align up with our development or our future connection plans of Lanark going through in the area. For a road closure, the 2 first steps are basically for this report is to agree in principle to the road closure for council and to determine the value of the road closure area. In this report, we've proposed using the BC assessment value as opposed to doing an appraised value. Alternately, the developer and applicant would be required to go get an appraisal of their property, which would take more time, provide the appraisal to the district, and then we would bring that amount forward. Right now, we're bringing the amount forward based on the BC assessment value. It's a very small portion of land. The value of it is going to be negligible based on what the value of the appraisal would be. So this will expedite the process a little bit. Following the resolutions tonight, if council agrees to resolve on them, the next steps would be to prepare a purchase and sale agreement for the small amount of property, and then for staff to develop a report to council for consideration of a road closure bylaw as well as the agreement. Following council's consideration of the road closure bylaw, it would go through, if approved by council, first and second reading, and then it would be advertised in the community newspaper for public comment for a 2-week period. And then a scheduled public information meeting would be held, which is in alignment with the community charter regulations. The fifth part would be to adopt it. So just the first 2 steps tonight, agree in principle for consideration of the road closure, and agree to the appraised values. If I can click forward, it will work. The resolutions. I cannot get that. Can you advance that to the end? There we go. Resolutions are in front of council for consideration.
Okay, is that the end of your presentation,
Yep.
Mr. Carter? Okay, so you're not seeing any issue with this request as you've outlined. There's no other pitfall that we're missing here. Okay, thank you, Councillor St. Pierre.
Through your worship, I'm just curious offhand, what would the cost of the appraisals actually be? Seems like it'd be almost the amount of the $7,000.
The cost of an appraisal could be anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000, upwards of $5,000, depending on who you got.
Just curious.
Other questions for staff? Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, through you to Mr. Carter, your PowerPoint here, you skipped through very quickly. Could you go back a couple of slides where we saw the rationales for this decision? I very quickly saw that. Included the Lanark there. Okay, let me just have a chance to soak that in. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Other questions? So the recommendations are, you have a question? Okay, I'll come to you then. That council authorized the 2023 BC assessment assessed value to be used in determining the value of the land proposed for closure and sale. That council directs staff to proceed with the preparation of a road closure and sale agreement. That council directs staff to prepare a bylaw and remove the highway dedication and dispose of a portion of undeveloped Goodmere Road right of way. And that council directs staff to proceed with the road closure and sale process as per council policy number 2.2. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Do you like to motivate? No, Councillor Beddoes, anything? Anything from anyone else? Okay. Yes, Councillor Bateman?
I was just curious about this public information meeting. Would that be in coordination with the development permit that will come forward, or it's just strictly for this small piece of land?
Through your worship, Councillor Bateman, it would be strictly for this piece of land for the public information session, not in relation to the development application. That would be separate.
Okay, all those in favor then? And that's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Carter. 9.2, next steps for OCP. Mr. Powell.
Thank you. So with this report that's coming forward following our previous discussion regarding recommencement of the official community plan review, we've discussed regarding a legal opinion what the next steps could look like on page 4 of item 9.2, as well as that would be page 70 of your regular agenda. You'll see a visual illustration of what the flow chart looks like based on various options. So starting from the right side and working our way to the left in terms of kind of vertical options, we're looking at June 19th tentatively as the committee of the whole date where we could have that input received from the community. And then going from there, if no changes were required following that meeting, we could proceed with a public hearing and then consider third reading as presented. If there's no changes required, then that could proceed directly to adoption of the official community plan. If there were changes to be considered, we'd have to determine, are those related to matters containing use or density? And if so, that would need to be referred back to staff to make the necessary changes and then go through another public hearing process. If there weren't any matters requiring use or density, but still changes required, we could make those changes and still proceed to adoption. However, the most likely case that would occur is that we have the committee of the whole meeting. Based on that, inputs received, changes are requested and made. Staff makes those and brings them back to council for consideration. We'll rescind second reading, give second reading as amended with those new changes included, and then schedule a public hearing. And then that way the public can see what the new official community plan as amended looks like and be able to provide comment at that public hearing based on those changes. And that would take into consideration all of that feedback received as part of that committee of the whole. And then at that stage, if there are no further changes required, we could proceed with third reading, and then ultimately adoption could proceed. So really the left side of that page of the flow chart is likely the most common outcome as we go through this process. So based on that, staff will look towards getting further information put together in preparation for a tentative June 19th committee of the whole date for the official community plan. With that, that summarizes our presentation regarding next steps for the official community plan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paulo. My understanding as well on that date is it is open to everyone, as all committee of the whole are. And we're keeping it in that structure so that it can be as free flowing as we can, given that all of council is sitting together. So we still have our procedural bylaw and Robert's rules in effect, but it is a committee of the whole setting and not the structure of a council setting. So it allows for more dialogue, and the intent would be that committee of the whole focuses on the OCP specifically. So there won't be other delegations or other business considered. Should council choose to that we need more time, then we can make that determination at that date and find other dates that are available. But we wanted to start by focusing in on something. So that is where we've landed. So for Mr. Helbing, who's here today, perhaps if you could share that with your organization as well. And there's just some things logistically that if folks have prepared PowerPoints, there's a way that we can get those to our corporate officer to make sure the technology works, and then we can just have things queued up if that's something that some are interested in doing. So it just helps for council to understand what the problems are, as opposed to, I don't like this. Well, I that's not helpful. We need a bit more than that. So we're just needing a bit of time to be observant of our internal pressures as well as council time and the like. So we're focusing on that date. Okay, and then we have the flow chart here. So is there any questions from members of council to staff? Go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation to the Director of Planning and through you. I think it's more of a comment, and it's the along the lines of it feels very structured, and it feels like that we're going to get that input, and hopefully the message gets out to the people who have had concerns. And I like the word meeting with the S on the bottom of it if needed. It feels structured at one meeting, but I anticipate there will be a lot of input. So, well, I anticipate there will be, and that's hopefully I'm right. But so and I think we're prepared for that, right? Thank you.
Excellent. So the motion is that council directs staff to proceed with scheduling of the committee of the whole meeting in June with an invite extended to local and regional builders, developers, and stakeholders. Moved by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any comments, McMath? Councillor McMath?
How are the invitations being sent out to the stakeholders? It's a question.
Email, letters, pigeon mail, phone calls, anything?
Yes, we have an email list that's been generated both during the time of the building bylaw review as well as the official community plan review. So we use that as our basis, as well as any other additional contact information that we've received throughout the OCP review process. I think just hearing from Mr. Haldane tonight regarding Thursday's meeting with the association, that will be another avenue that we communicate with, and ideally have them work with their membership as well to get the message out.
And then just the pieces around the information that council has received, that would be new information to the public. How is that being woven into this timeline?
Staff answer that.
Sorry, the new information that's being received and how the public receives that?
So council received information from CEO Schaefer. And so how is that being woven into basically the new public hearing for this OCP?
So all the information that's been received by council to date would be information that gets attached as previous reports to each new report coming forward. So when we go forward to the committee of the whole, there'll be that last report that was prepared with all the correspondence. So there's that kind of that running tally of info.
Thank you.
Councillor St. Pierre.
I just wanted to comment that this committee of the whole is because council really wanted to be involved and wanted to hear what was going on. But it's really meant to provide the opportunity to look at the DPAs. And I think council realizes that we'll be a little bit out of our depths, and that we'll be soaking it in, taking it in, and ideally able to be better informed or to move the process along quickly. But this is really an opportunity in many ways for staff to work with the community and actually make whatever adjustments are needed to the DPAs to make them satisfactory. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Okay, thank you. Other comments, Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, so through you to Mr. Palo, stakeholders, how do you define stakeholders when it comes to development permit guidelines? And who will you invite?
Yes, I can't recall if that. So builders, developers, stakeholders, just let me check on the previous motion from last month. Yes, that was the motion from March 20th. So stakeholders, or alternatively partners, is another term that's referred to, and that's anybody that that would have an interest in providing input into the process as it is deemed to affect them. So that's how we get that information out, is okay, that's a party that is able to provide input to the process. I mentioned previously about the Urban Development Institute being able to provide some input on a more regional scale. So I'd like to be able to get that information and have it on a future report to council and the public to review. So that it's an open invite, essentially, for anyone who wishes to participate.
Okay, so would that involve a large ad in the newspaper? Potentially, if indeed form and character in the future built environment in Souk is an interest to every last one of us, I would think.
I'll work with our communications coordinator to determine what's the best opportunity to provide output information to everybody. So initially that was the email list. As we know, those are ongoing people who wish to be informed, as well as our website, our social media that we do use, and any other format. Typically, we've used the newspaper as a way to advertise for public hearings. We'll determine if an ad specifically for the committee of the whole is a route to go, but I think our communications coordinator will be best suited to determine how best to reach the public to inform them.
Often more effective to do many small things as opposed to one big thing that you miss entirely on the one page. Councillor St. Pierre?
I'd like to suggest that as a committee of the whole, the public is invited, but this is again really meant to provide a forum for specific stakeholders to actually have a chance to engage with staff in order to actually really look in depth at the DPAs. In some ways, the general public is not left council. Good for us to know what's going on, good to be aware, but it's really very necessary for certain members of the community to actually communicate clearly with staff and staff to communicate with those members of the community. So although I understand the need, and I agree with the need to make sure the entire community knows that it's happening and it is aware and is invited, let's keep in mind this is very much an exercise in terms of getting the DPA sorted out.
Yeah, noted. It's just when all of council meets, we meet openly and anyone has a comment and ability to observe and to comment. So it's the way it is. Yeah, it's part of the process and the work that we're doing. Okay. Anything from anyone else? Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor, please. It's unanimous. Thank you. Item 10 is our bylaw section. For first one up is 10.1.
Point of order,
Yes,
we have a brief health break.
a health break. Yes, okay. It's 7:49, so we will recess to 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, 8 sharp, according to my clock. Okay, we're 8 o'clock and we are back. So thank you, everyone. We're in section 10 under 10.1. So bylaw 875 subdivision and development standards amendment. So this has gone through some readings. It's here for adoption. So the motion would be that council adopt the bylaw cited as subdivision and standards bylaw amendment number 875-404-03 2023. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Not seconding, okay. So I'm looking for a seconded by Councillor Bateman. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor St. Pierre? As the mover, with the microphone on? You don't,
This seems to be a fairly straightforward change in nomenclature. Don't see a problem with it.
Councillor Bateman as a seconder?
Yeah, I'll just note that in the transportation master plan, under one of the very, I think it was action 7.2, I think those actions are prioritized. It did indicate that we needed to get those cross sections into the bylaw. So.
Thank you. Other comments, Councillor Pearson?
Yes, I won't be supporting the motion as made. I feel that we this was one of these bylaws that came forward in haste, in my opinion, without a robust discussion, although there was enough for quorum there. We're reviewing all of our bylaws this summer in the development subdivision bylaw. And I think that I would support tabling this because it feels like we did it in haste because of an application. And in the background, that application was they were concerned with the imposing of this bylaw. We created the bylaw after the fact. So I don't think we should be doing business like that. If it's what we want as a council and part of our transportation master plan, and we're reviewing all those bylaws, then it's there. I don't like the idea of a retroactive bylaw taking place in an application and development permit. That's my own personal opinion. So I won't be supporting the adoption at this point. I would support tabling it in order to keep it live, but I won't be voting for it. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, I would echo those sentiments. I'm not, still not comfortable supporting it. I agree that our bylaws are overdue for a complete refresh. And this is not the approach to take it. I don't think we should do it in a piecemeal manner. This feels more like a mid-game rule change to me. And I don't believe it fits with council's goal of building a reputable organization.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Councillor McMath?
There's a question. Can you just give more clarity as to the complications that are going to arise from that application with this bylaw?
We're at a public meeting, so yes, I'll do the best I can. There was an application that was made. There was concerns over the cross section of the road and the clarity of it. We asked for it as part of the DP. The applicant took exception with that part of it, reviewed our bylaws. Our bylaws were not in fact in place to request that. So at the last meeting, it felt like that was okay. It's to catch it at last minute as an afterthought. We should be sticking to the bylaws at the time of an application, not changing the bylaws midstream. It's interesting that Councillor Bateman pulled out a piece of correspondence tonight that outlines that to the minister about different developments on multifamily. So the rules of the game protected by the government is it stays in effect for 12 months, the current, or they're trying to do that. It just feels like that we were changing it based on the application. And it could be a mistake or it could be left out, but I don't think it's fair to an applicant to change. And that's why I think we did.
Thank you. And then just follow up to that. Is there a rush for this coming forward, or is this something that can be wait? Wow, amazing. That can wait to be discussed maybe at that CAL that we're discussing in June.
Through your worship to Councillor McMath. So a couple pieces with this amendment. Since 2020, council adopted their transportation master plan. Engineering department staff have been putting out referrals in alignment with those cross sections since 2020. All of the cross sections in the TMP are essentially a reconfiguration of the cross section elements that are in bylaw 404. The only piece in the transportation master plan that cannot be conveyed to the applicants is the town center cross section, which we did determine in the case of this application. So right now in bylaw 404, there is not one cross section that has a 4-meter sidewalk cross section. The town center is the only one that does. Because of that, I can, under my authority in 404, I can accept reconfigurations of bylaw 404 cross sections with the same design elements, which is essentially most of the corridors, all the local arterial, they're all design reconfigurations of the existing cross sections in 404. The town center one is an extra infrastructure requirement because there's no cross sections in bylaw 404 that have a 4-meter cross section requirement. It's just the town center and the transportation master plan. So this did come to light during a development application where we did require the town center cross section to an applicant. And no, we cannot require an applicant to have an additional infrastructure element that is not within bylaw 404. And it's not because there's no 4-meter cross sections. But in relation to this particular development application, this amendment tonight will not impact their development application at all. If the bylaw is not adopted tonight, the applicant will need a variance, which I will support as long as council is okay with the implications. And if the bylaw is adopted tonight, they will also need a variance, which I will also support if council is okay with the implications. All it means by not adopting the bylaw tonight is from this point forward until bylaw 404 is adopted, which is going to go through a wholesome review process and public consultation process the entire summer. But until that bylaw is adopted, any developments within the town center, I cannot convey a 4-meter sidewalk requirement, which is one of the big things in the transportation master plan. So I have met with the applicant since the last meeting when it was at 3 readings. I've explained all this to them, and it's not just because of their application. Their application brought it to my attention. And now moving forward, the amendment needs to go in place if council wishes for staff to convey the town center requirements to any applications up until the bylaw gets adopted, which could take anywhere from 6 to 12 months, depending on the public consultation process. The only amendment we're doing is putting the TMP cross sections in the bylaw. So it supports referrals in alignment with council's transportation master plan.
I see both sides. I can see why that applicant would feel like this has been created because of their application. But I hear what you're saying as well. So I feel like I'm missing a piece. Why is the applicant, if you've had that discussion, why do they still have concerns? What are their red flags with this?
Through your worship, the Councillor McMath, I don't know, but the applicant is in the room with us tonight. So since the last council meeting, I sat down and met with the applicant. So essentially with the development plans they're proposing at 6569 Soup Road, Bay Shore Development, just south side of the highway there near Church Road. If the bylaw is not adopted tonight, I cannot convey the town center requirements, but with what they're proposing, they are proposing a 2-meter decorative shrub bed that's under a landscape contract, which is not part of the transportation master plan and is not part of bylaw 404. So if the council does not adopt the bylaw tonight, the applicant will still need a variance to go forward with the cross section they're proposing. If council adopts the bylaw tonight, the applicant will still need a variance, 1 for the landscaping, but 2 to have a 2-meter sidewalk instead of a 4-meter sidewalk in the town center. And they would need a variance to have that sidewalk concrete as opposed to brick pavers. So there's a variance required either way. I am in full support of the variance as long as council is aware of the implications, which is my job to make sure council is aware of any variances and what the implications are to those variances. But if council is in support of those either way, I would be in support of those as well. So no difference.
So I fully comprehend. So if we move forward with this,
Yeah.
they're going to have to come forward with a variance regardless, but there'll be 2 additional ones because of this change. And then you're going to support the variance that they would still have their change in setback requirements.
No, not the change in setback. I'm not talking, that's nothing to do with it. That I would be in support of their variance either way if this is adopted. So there's no delay. There's no impact to the applicant based on this bylaw change. I'll support the variance either way, as long as council's aware of the implications. But there's no delay to this application whatsoever. In fact, I've met with the applicant. We've been working with the applicant, road closure report, and an example of being creative and suggesting going with the assessed value or the assessed value as opposed to the appraised value is an example of us working with the developer to say, hey, this makes sense. Let's not delay the process any further. Let's expedite it. Let's work together. So that would be an example of it. Bylaw adoption either way makes no difference to this applicant's process for his application or timeframe. It just means that if the bylaw is not adopted tonight, the town center cross section cannot get conveyed to anyone developing in the town center for the next up to a year.
And there's no additional financial burden that would be put on the applicant with the change to this?
Nothing at all.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor St. Pierre?
We did discuss this in the past, and I think that it's just important to remember that the transportation master plan is actually the vision of the community. And if we don't actually have these changes made, as Mr. Carter's pointed out, we're going to have a whole lot of developers unclear, lacking clarity, not actually in agreement with TMP, having delays because of this. If developers in general know exactly what the ground rules are, they can move forward more quickly. And I think they crave that kind of security to know exactly what's going on. Right now, when we have a disjunct between our bylaws and our TMP, we're creating confusion. If it's not going to create any undue stress on the applicant, I understand the unfairness, but we need to move forward to make sure that we don't actually create a whole backlog of variances and nonsense and brick going to concrete and concrete going to brick and 2 meter going to 4 meter, because that's what we're looking at. And we just don't need that. If we actually make these changes, then we can actually be consistent in terms of the cross sections with any developers that come forward from this point on. If not, then they can go to the bylaws and say, well, that says 2 meters and over here you want 4 meters. Well, it's nice that you want it, but I just want to give you 2. And then when we actually get to the point where we get to 4 meters, we have 2 meters going to 4, 4 going to 2, depending which properties got developed first. This is a mess. And we really don't want to deal with it that way.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Pearson?
And I hear all the comments. I just think that when we have the local government act says you can't hide a bylaw within another bylaw. So transportation master plan is a bylaw unto itself, but you can't hide the bylaw in there. If you understand what I'm saying, you can't have 2. So our cross sections have to be created as a bylaw. And if it's not in 404 now, we shouldn't be enforcing that 4 meters. The applicant wouldn't have come forward if it was a 2 meter sidewalk and saying about the 4 meters. We have in our transportation master plan, it says commercial. So, and this is not in the commercial area. It is in our town center, and we've created some ambiguous restrictions or requirements, hence this bylaw coming forward. And I appreciate staff trying to rectify it, but it feels like we're doing it after the fact. I would rather, and if we want to do this, I have no issue with that. That's why I suggested tabling it as an alternative to passing it. It may very well be the best thing to do, but if we're reviewing our entire bylaw this summer, then that's where it ought to come up. That's not a long time. We don't have a lot of action in our downtown core right now. We've got an applicant right now who wants to go ahead with their development. They want to get shovels in the ground this year before springtime. And I think that sometimes we have to do the right thing. And this is just one of those cases for me personally, but I will vote against the motion, which I've already told, but I think that there's a way out for all of us, which is tabling it as
Okay.
opposed to turning it down, because if we turn it down and defeat it, it will not come back.
Well, what would happen is if council did not adopt the bylaw, then we would need to give different direction back to staff. And then, so it doesn't mean that it disappears. It's either going, there's 7 of us, so it's either going to pass or be defeated. And then if it's defeated, then we would simply then need to give different direction to staff. So it doesn't disappear. It'll just either be one way or the other. Councillor Beddoes, did you have your hand up? See hands over here. I was just gonna go to a first-time speaker. He already spoke once, so I'm looking for any first-time speakers.
Yeah, okay, well, again, we hashed this out last time, but I understand not everybody was here, so obviously we're gonna be doing it again, which is okay, democracy works. I guess being involved with the downtown core and the areas and what the public wants, and the transportation master plan, I am a little disturbed that it's going to affect an applicant, but that is what's drawn it to staff's attention, that there's a glitch here. And the attempt is to change the glitch so that any other applicants that come forward will have to be considered in this wider streetscape. And I'm in favor of the wider streetscape because that's what I heard when I walked around with the committee and the OCP of what they wanted to see. They wanted wide boulevards down to the water. And that was important. That was loud and clear. People wanted to see the water. So here we have a situation with the transportation master plan, which sort of allowed for that, and it hasn't caught up with our bylaw. Yeah, you could postpone it for another year. God knows how long it's going to take to go through the bylaws. But this is a housekeeping thing. So I'm in favor of proceeding with it. Get it done again with everybody knows what the playing field is, and then we can get on with it. Because I think that I think we'd be doing a disservice to this community. I mean, I understand that developers don't always like to put in the amenities, but I heard loud and clear that people want to see the water when they come to downtown. We talk about economic development and people coming here, they'll just drive through to Port Renfrew. I mean, you know, they want to see some sort of a viable community. So I'm in favor of this. I will vote for it, and I hope you would consider it too. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Bateman, then St. Pierre, then McMath.
Yeah, thank you. Such a good conversation. So many good points being raised here. I'm just curious through you to Mr. Powell, over the next year, during this gestation period of bylaw, the new bylaw, how much activity do you anticipate happening in the town center?
I'd like to see a new application every week, but I think with just with recent discussions that we've had with prospective developers, there has certainly been an increase that I've observed over the last month, which looks very favorable for us to build out the town center a lot more than we've probably experienced in the past, both from a density standpoint as well as multiple strategic locations throughout the town center. So we're not just focusing in one specific location; it's spread out over that area. And I think it lends itself well to making sure that both from a planning and an engineering perspective, we're all working on the same page as to what those expectations are from all of our master plans.
Councillor St. Pierre, then McMath.
Through your worship, a question to staff. I was curious as to whether or not there are other projects that have gone forward with the 4-meter cross section. So have other developers been asked to put that in? Is this the first time this has come up?
Through your worship to Councillor St. Pierre, yes, one development application with Brownsy Boulevard they've accepted the 4-meter cross section that we've put forward. But it's also their frontage improvements as well as all their offsite works are also a part of the DCC program, which they would receive credit for. So there wasn't a concern that was brought to our attention for the additional 2 meters of sidewalk versus asphalt from that developer. One more piece I will add is this does not slow down or impact that developer's application at all. We would be in support of the variance. Also, council's transportation master plan is what they have also approved hundreds of thousands of dollars of budgets for my department to work with over the last couple of years to design almost $50 million worth of corridors in Souk. We've built out 2 of them. We have 2 of them on the table for this year. The transportation master plan cross sections are what those corridors are based off of. If going forward, I have to make referrals off of bylaw 404, they will not be in alignment with the corridors that we're designing and constructing in the district of Souk.
Okay, so we've got something that's already in place, something that developers have already been using. It's unfortunate that we do have a disjunct again between those 2, but I think we need to make this right. I would also just point out that the area is mixed use, I believe. Is that correct? Zoned mixed use?
The specific property in question?
Yes, please.
It's a comprehensive development zone. So yes, there's a number of mixed uses contained within that zoning.
Okay, so that could potentially involve commercial in the future. And at that point, that 4-meter section is going to be wanted and needed by future users of that site, or potentially. Again, I'm in favor of the bylaw, and I think that we just need to make sure that we're maintaining the vision of the community, the people that actually support and elect to this. So,
Councillor McMath.
Just so
we're all on the same page here. So the only roadblock for this applicant and the only thing that would impact this applicant, because unfortunately they're the one that flagged an issue with the discrepancy that we're talking about. The only roadblock would be this council. So if council does not approve those variances, then we would be the problem. So they were the property that caused a flag, but staff has said there's going to be no financial impact. There's going to be no delay in the process of this. The variances will come forward with support from staff. So the last missing piece would be just for us to approve that. So then nothing would change for that applicant, but then we would have our bylaws match our TMP. So staff is recognizing that this property was the one that put the flag up, but they have put a piece together so that that applicant doesn't see consequences for being the one that put that out there. So if there's no delay, there's no financial impact, there's no change to their process and their application, and then we're coming in line with the TMP. Like, my only question to the rest of the group would be why wouldn't we go ahead with it?
Go ahead, and then I have some comments to make.
It comes down to procedural fairness for me personally. We're not losing any view corridors with the proposed road cross section with the boulevard and the proposed green space that they're having. It comes down to, I'm not sure the east-west is there. It was specific to commercial. The 4-meter sidewalks are specific to commercial. In our transportation master plan, it has the word commercial written in there. Future use, mixed use, I'm not sure that that's a valid argument in this case. It doesn't have the commercial component in this, it's residential. This is a comprehensive development zone that's been in place since 2011. So again, changing our transportation master plan in the downtown core to 4-meter sidewalks where there is no other 4-meter sidewalks, not even on Route 14. We don't have them anywhere. And imposing them after the fact is still, I still go back to that same argument, is that it's after the fact. And that's, it's too bad the applicant can't talk tonight, but for me, it's that it comes down to procedural fairness and what we should do as a professional organization.
Okay, that's
Okay,
fine.
thank you.
Mr. Carter?
Just to add one more piece, for clarity in the TMP, not one applicant has brought to my attention, this differentiation between a 4-meter and a 2-meter cross section. I provided clarity to the current applicant on that. The TMP cross section in the back, like literally in the diagram sections, shows the cross section in plan view. And then there's a little bubble that comes out that basically shows a cross section view of what a beautiful 4-meter sidewalk would look like with street trees, street furniture, etc. On the title of Town Center cross section, it highlights underneath that this is the commercial area. So this is the area in your entire town center where commercial and mixed use is supported. By no means was the interpretation of that supposed to mean that everywhere in the town center that there's a commercial development, you have a 4-meter sidewalk. And then if you got a residential for like one property, it goes down to 2 meters. Then a commercial, it goes out to 4 meters. No one has made that misinterpretation to date yet. It was a bit of a stretch and it's not what it means. And we could make the appropriate amendments to the TMP if required for clarification.
Okay, thank you. So just some comments for myself. I know that council deliberated over this in the last meeting and came to a split outcome, which is fine. It's democracy as it is. Similar to Councillor McMath, I've been looking at this from all different sides. At the end of the day, like, I'm not fixated on any particular application because that is not what's in front of us here. The TMP is our most recent plan that we have been implementing. It's one that is referred to many times, whether it comes to advancement of the 5-year financial plan, grant applications, and so forth. And those cross sections come to us, and it's what we've been using, and it's what we have done with the corridors that we've already built. When I look at the town center, what we're trying to achieve is a vibrant place for people and businesses to gather together and to move around easily. And so that's where the 4-meter section comes about. When it's 2 meters and you have someone with a dog on one side, someone pushing a stroller on the other, someone ends up in the road because it's not wide enough. And if we want to encourage a vibrant town center, it means that there's humans moving around in it. Whether they're walking or strolling or whatever, that is what they're doing. And it's the people that make the town vibrant. The wider cross sections allow for street art, public benches, amenities, shelter, trees, pop-up events like night markets, evening theater, miming, I don't know, Shakespeare in the Park came to mind. Whatever goes on because it brings vibrancy. If it was all residential, you may find residents might say, let's do an annual garage sale like the Sun River residents do, and would want the space to be able to do that. We can't put the space in after the fact. It has to go in the beginning. Staff may support the variance. I might, I don't know. That's my decision when that item comes forward. And we'll make that determination, but I'm not gonna say here because the applicant is in the room that I have no idea because I'm not even looking at it. I'm looking at something entirely different. There is interest in the town center. And we are running into this, and we have for quite some time where something doesn't match with something else. And then it's the case of, okay, we were focused on, we'll get the OCP done, we'll get the zoning bylaw done, we'll bring all these other things in. And now we're looking at starting that process in June, which means other things that emerge, we have to just get on top of as staff identify and find them. You need to bring them forward so that we're not, otherwise you're going to wait 2 to 3 years, 4 years for every bylaw to be caught up. And then we'll start doing the transportation master plan all over again. And we'll end up with the big mess that we had previously with the last transportation master plan. And it was never implemented because it conflicted here and there and everywhere, and it got shelved. So we embrace that plan because it's what we want to do. Council may also realize that we also had a decision to make at some point in the last term about our pavers and how far we wanted to take the pavers because of the cost involved. And we had a choice as to whether or not we were going to run just concrete all the way, or if we were going to do the pavers instead. And we had to make that decision, how far we were going to extend the budget. We knew we could go further if it was just narrower and plainer and not as far with the pavers. We decided to go with the pavers because we knew in the future it would be more attractive. And when future generations looked at it and went, why did you stop this here? That was not the decision we wanted to make. So we extended the pavers and we found savings. The ministry, I think, chipped in some. We could go further with the pavers all the way to Ed McGregor Park, whereas initially those pavers ended at Otter Point Road. We made the decision to extend them and then as far as we could. And we received really good feedback from those businesses because they saw the same care and attention that another part of Souk had already received. When the owners of Evergreen Mall came forward to change or to redevelop the area that was burned down, they also did not want to put in the pavers and would cut it off. But from a design and appeal purpose, they agreed to extend the pavers because it's a more attractive entry into the mall complex, which it remains to be today. So I appreciate everyone's perspective on this. But I'm content with how this is rolled forward. And when the application comes forward, we'll deal with that separately then. But for now, I think I agree that some consistency and using a plan that we as a community have been using to implement a cross section that our town is wanting is what the residents are going to be expecting when they see different projects arrive. So I'll leave it at that. Any other comments? Okay, this has been moved and seconded. Would like to speak?
Yeah, just since you brought up pavers, the pavers, there are some really nice options for dyed and textured concrete that are far less maintenance intense than pavers. pavers look beautiful when they're first installed, but give them a few years and they start heaving and they become a major maintenance issue. So just because you mentioned pavers, that's the only reason I'm.
Okay, I just referred it because it's what's in the section here of what the struck out and the new one would be. But I just raised that because that was a decision that council had already made in the past. All right, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed is Councillors Pearson and Councillor Lajeunesse, and that carries on a 5-2. Okay, next up is 10.2, and that is the bylaw 880, Growing Communities Reserve Fund. So that here is for adoption, that council adopt the bylaw cited as Growing Communities Reserve Fund, bylaw number 880, 2023. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor McMath. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's unanimous. Any opposed? No, that's unanimous. Thank you. Financial plan 2023 to 27, 5-year financial plan. So over to Ms. Gray, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I don't have a PowerPoint to go along with this, because this is just the introduction of the bylaw to council. What has been detailed in the report is the reductions that were made to various department asks that council saw a couple meetings ago. And those were the reduction staff made to come up to the 6.99% property tax increase for 2023. If council supports 3 readings of this bylaw tonight, the next steps as stated would be an open house conducted on Wednesday from 2 to 7 in Municipal Hall here. And then there'll be a very quick turnaround because the open house is more about informing the community on what's included in the budget, because the summer months and throughout the year, the other markets and open houses we attend is where we actually gather all the information that formulates the proposals and the recommendation staff provide to council on budget inputs. So the open house would occur and then staff would turn around a quick report to provide any feedback or comments heard at that open house. And that would be presented to council at the April 24th regular council meeting, where the bylaw would be up for adoption. As well as that meeting, the introduction of the property tax rate bylaw would occur with first to third readings being requested by staff. And during that meeting, staff can provide further details on the requisitions from CRD and BC Transit and other organizations that we collect taxes for, and pie charts and further details can be presented. What is included is a new version of the big financial plan book. We're trying to transition away from the detailed number heavy book and transition into something more that the community is used to seeing through the annual report. It's more like a financial version of the annual report. And so this is the first version of this staff are working on for 2023, and we'll be fine tuning and finalizing this for the 2023 budget or financial plan presentation that will be presented at the open house, as well as posted on our website, et cetera. And then this is just kind of the first draft of this 2024 budget. Will include a lot more details and information as we have more time to flesh that out. So I will leave that there and open it if there's any further questions at this point.
Okay, so the open house will be April the 19th.
Correct.
2 to 7 here in Chambers.
Correct.
Okay, and just on the report, there was just one thing that jumped out at me. It's just a placeholder, I think, isn't linking. It was just in the sorry, the attached report under revenue changes. It just says error bookmark not defined.
Yes, so that's the fine formatting pieces that we're working on. Just as we're finalizing the final page count, the table of contents will be the last piece completed on that. The plan would be, again, if this gets 3 readings tonight, is to finalize this for Thursday, and we can send a final version out to council. And then that will be distributed through the normal channels.
Okay, that's fine. Other questions? Councillor St. Pierre.
Just more of a comment, sort of question. I love the report, by the way, and I love the graphics that were used, very clear. My new learning for this year was fixed costs. And I was astonished at how high our fixed costs were, as opposed to anything we actually had any control over. I didn't actually spot that, but is it in the infographics?
It's not in there currently. That is definitely a pie chart we could add,
I think it's a really
to it.
interesting one.
We're just been kind of, yeah, for 2023 being the unique year it was with inflation, that's definitely, something we can add to the front pages of that document.
Because it does indicate honestly how little latitude we really have in terms of where it goes. But thank you.
Correct. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments of staff? Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I have a few, so please bear with me and be patient. So just to start with the report, yeah, it's excellent. In this desire for transparency, and as I think I've said before, I don't want to get into the weeds. I want to know what the weeds are. So this document here, the traditional version of our 5-year financial plan, describes the weeds of the district intimately. And in terms of us being a transparent organization, do you not think that a document like this should be an addendum to a really wonderful public facing version?
Through your worship, sorry. In looking at other municipalities' financial plans, they don't include that level of detail in anything I have seen to that. So, but in order to your point about transparency, which is why with the quarterly financial reporting that the district will be doing, is the mechanism, the avenue on a regular basis to kind of get the community and or council kind of in more of the weeds of those detailed line by line analysis. And this financial plan, like it's however many pages, it'll probably be 30+ pages when we're done with it. If you add that detail on, that's even that many more pages. So I guess, yeah, staff are feeling like we can get that information out to the public and the community in different formats on a quarterly basis. It's more useful and relevant, and that can help inform the community when we're seeking their engagement, developing next year's budget. We can use those as speaking points. And at this stage in the budget, it's more about focusing on the high level numbers, and the staff are kind of focusing on the items that we have control over, similar to Councillor St. Pierre's question or statement.
Okay, thank you. I'll miss this document, but
I thought you would.
this, and I'll bring my copy of it with me. Now, page 11, under operating revenue, you've anticipating grants this year of 13.393 million. Is that realistic, or is that based on currently outstanding grant numbers? Applications?
To your worship, that would be comprised of the capital grants we have or potential funding sources. For the Demamiel Trail is one grant that's in there for $1.3 million, I believe. What else is included in there? I believe it's mostly grants related to the capital projects. 1 second here. And it's the use of the COVID safe restart grant. So it's just all encompassing of all of the grants. So we can kind of drill into that number a little bit with the final report here, if that's what you wanted to be included. So it's mostly just around the capital projects and the funding sources. The Growing BC Fund is a significant portion of that funding. Staff are proposing spending, a fairly hefty chunk of those funds this year. So it's just the other non-reserve funds tax sources, which would be the Growing BC Fund, the COVID fund, which is considered a grant, even though it's in a reserve fund, but because we got how we got the money for our reporting purposes.
All right, may it be so. Let's see, page 14, I understand that is the where am I? It's page 14. Yeah, I see that that page will be updated.
Correct. Yes.
With anticipation of those 5 years of tax increases.
Yes, correct. It just in the final formatting, then that got cut out it's there. It's just hidden under the header bars. So we will correct that to show the tax and non-market line and the percentage increases in the out years for sure.
Page 19. Where am I? Page 1994 of the agenda. I note council expenditures over the 5-year term drop by about 21,000. Everyone else is going up. So I'm taking that a little personally. Why are we dropping over those 5 years? From 701 this year to 677. I know we've
Just bear with me for a second. Look.
You're looking at the sheet that says administrative services at the top? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean there for 2025.
Yeah, and while you're looking, I guess there's the matter of 5-year plans and how they seem to be very focused on year 1. And the remaining 4 years are very fluid, and perhaps that's part of this. Keeping.
The out years are definitely a moving target. We focus mostly on the current year because that's the knowns, and then the out years are educated best guesses of how that's going to flow through. So the council section, sorry, I'm just kind of is the drop off of the Shelter Society. That was only a 2-year agreement,
Right.
so that drops off. And what else is dropping off? Something happened here.
Okay, perhaps you could let us know at the next meeting. Yeah.
Just kind of through the council travel is reduced in the 2027 year. Yeah, I can provide a bit more details to
Yeah.
council in the email of
Just curious.
some of those smaller changes.
It also may be that the front year has so much added training in it. And then it starts to drop off, and then also like FCM next year's in Calgary, so not as expensive travel. Some more UBCM will be in Victoria, so there are some pieces that shift about.
Oh, sorry. The other piece was the larger 25,000 chunk is the Sauk Region Community Health Initiative, which drops off. So that's a significant chunk of that variance. Sorry, just give me a second to find that. On page 23.
You need to turn on the microphone.
Page 23, I've just got a few more of these. Page 23 on page 98 of the agenda. Financial services and IT rise quite dramatically in years 2026 and 2027. What do you have planned for those years?
Nothing specific planned. That's just a placeholder for potential future staffing over and above non-market change. So it's just a placeholder, not saying it's going to be finance staff necessarily. But it's just a placeholder for 2 potential staff members for whatever department may need them. So it's just trying to, plan out and keep those future increases relatively known-ish.
Yeah.
So that's why it's bumming. It's just been a placeholder placed in that department.
Okay, page 27, you've indicated highway maintenance contract at 425,000 over these. Surely that's impossible to predict what number will come in at.
It absolutely is impossible to
Yeah.
predict. We have a contract that has stated rates, but we never know from year to year exactly if there's extra roads added or other pieces like that occur. So for a budgeting purpose, that is a number that will fluctuate every year depending on prior actuals and what maintenance has actually occurred.
Page 34. Sorry about this, gang. I just endlessly curious. I see Otter Point Road resurfacing is in the budget.
Correct.
From where to where? Is that Wadhams to the hall, or where is that resurfacing happening?
Microphone.
Oh yeah, sorry, it's a carryover from last year. So last year we did some critical patches on Otter Point. I don't know the exact crossroad locations, but it's in the same vicinity that we did that, just basically going north of the municipal hall here.
Okay.
So same area. This is just going to get the overlay. It's the final asphalt lift layer that just does it and secures it in there.
All right. I was curious about the status of the West Coast Road sidewalk expansion from Ed McGregor to Whiffenspit Road. Is that being sidelined for now, or where do things stand?
Through your worship to Councillor Bateman, it's not, I don't believe that one is in the 5-year financial plan. It would be pushed more to out years. It is 100% designed. We have the
Right.
whole thing designed and shelf ready, but other critical TMB corridors will be more of a priority.
Got it. And finally, also on page 34 under parks, this municipal hall architect needs assessment. So tell me about that.
Through your worship to Councillor Bateman, so there's sort of two levels here. So there's a bare bones building needs assessment, which highlights probably a couple $1 million worth of improvements that you can put in. My personal opinion is that might actually escalate a little bit more to a few million. It's always very difficult going into an existing building. So last year and the year before, we had budget allocated to work with an architectural firm. I came up with an unfortunate sort of Taj Mahal example of the municipal hall, which probably constituted upwards around a $12 million project. That's for complete reconstruction. So the funds in working with the architect is basically to see if we can find a middle ground. Is there a middle ground that would be another option? And this wouldn't be a priority in the beginning of the year, other large capital priorities to start up, but it would be a priority going into the tail end of the year if we could try and work through those options. But I wouldn't anticipate anything brought forward to council this year. It would be a next year bringing forward options.
All right, thank you for your questions. The one around municipal hall is interesting because at one point we were looking at some sort of a trailer or something or other. Yeah.
I believe
Anyway.
the trailer was gonna be like a temporary solution.
Yeah, it was, but
Yeah,
it was just to
totally.
recognize the growing needs and where we're replacing everybody. Okay, so here we have the motion then would be that council give first, second, and third reading to 2023 to 27 financial plan bylaw 881/2023. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor McMath. Would you like to speak to it?
Mostly all been said. It looks great. Thank you for all your work.
Councillor McMath?
Just thank you guys for, I know it's hard to work when it's like so constricting and still trying to produce all these amenities for a community that doesn't always understand how this process works. So thank you so much.
Anything from anyone else? Okay, I'll call a question. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for your work on this. No new business. So item is 12.1. This was an item of correspondence that came forward and I just extracted it so that it would be here. Just to draw some greater attention to the work that Crest is doing. Councillor McMath is representing us there, so I didn't intend to do anything. It's just certain times when we have appointments like this, rather than just losing the correspondence in the block, I tend to bring them forward so that they're here, so. I'll just look to receive for information. Okay, moved by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Anything from anyone else? No, all in favor? It's unanimous, thank you. The next one is 12.2, the retroactive police costs. So we sort of knew this was coming. And as I understand from our finance director that we can absorb this, we're absorbing this over 2 years. We have 2 years, as you mentioned earlier in your report. And we'll be paying it over those 2 years, which makes sense, right? Keep our money longer. But the intent here of what's coming from FCM is that while we pay for these decisions, we're not at the negotiating table and we have little to no say and minimal representation. And so there has been strong advocacy that the federal government absorb the cost, and it was ongoing for a long time. And then obviously with the budget, they've decided not to. And so I support our RCMP and of course the unionization efforts and all that, so that there's a safe workplace and all of those things which are important for retention and recruitment. It just comes down to the federal government making decisions without local government representation at the table. So it's all fine to spend somebody else's money, but they're not the ones on the hook for this. And so while we have an ability, and I think it makes sense because we're still vulnerable when it comes to major events potentially and how they impact us. So I just brought this forward in hopes that council would agree that we accept the FCM correspondence, but that we also pass the resolution that has been drafted. Councillor St. Pierre?
This was in the agenda package, so we can vote on it tonight.
It was in our agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, which is
Right, I
why
see- I
it's
see it
here.
right here. That's why I'm saying,
Yes,
so we can't vote on it tonight.
yeah, because it's already, it was pulled in advance from the block.
Okay. Well, then I'll move it.
Okay, so the way it would work, then I think the first part is, okay, to receive the correspondence for information. So that's item number 1. So Councillor St. Pierre is moving that, seconded by Councillor McMath. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. And then the resolution we would pass would be this. Whereas the government of Canada has made the decision in budget 23 to make municipalities responsible for all retroactive costs stemming from the latest RCMP collective bargaining agreement. And whereas these extraordinary one-time costs, which in some jurisdictions amount to millions of dollars, will cause significant hardship for communities and residents across the country, and were negotiated without meaningful confrontation or a seat at the table for the municipalities responsible for paying the bill. And whereas municipal governments are already paying a growing share of policing costs, but unlike other orders of government, cannot run deficits to spread out the impact of these extraordinary one-time sums and have limited revenue tools. And whereas local governments will now be forced to make difficult decisions that will impact residents, such as cutting essential services, reducing policing levels, raising property taxes significantly, and or canceling work on local government structure at a time when Canadians' concerns about community safety and the cost of living are already rising. And whereas going forward, it's critical that municipalities be proactively engaged in any forthcoming processes related to contract policing to prevent this occurring again. And therefore, be it resolved that the District of Sault joins the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in calling on the federal governments to commit to ensuring that local governments are meaningfully consulted, fully informed, and at the table on issues resulting to policing costs, given the municipal role in keeping our communities safe. And be it further that the District of Sault conveys the support in writing to local members of Parliament. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Would you like to speak to it further? Okay, Councillor Lajeunesse.
Nope.
Okay, anything from anyone else? Nope. Straightforward then. Well, we're doing our best. We found a way through our budget to continue on with the work that we need to do, capital improvements, and fire and policing, but that's been strategic work by both our acting staff sergeant as well as our fire chief. And now we, as you saw in previous slides, have reduced some services like snow removal, which a member of the public felt we needed to increase. But given the cost pressures and trying to stay as something that's attainable, some things have to go, unfortunately. Hopefully we'll have a mild, at a time when, changing climate kind of beats us all quite hard. So anyway, I'll call the question. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Sorry about my voice. This cold is really bad. Almost there. 12.3 Integrated Police Units Regional Governance Council. So I'm beginning to receive correspondence about meeting dates. And then I realized that I don't believe anyone is appointed to this. And I think Councillor Beddoes was previously, right?
I think previously you were appointed to it and you asked me to sit in for you.
Okay.
Which I did. I don't think you ever made a meeting.
No.
Because you were very, very busy. And I said, so if I'd be willing to stand for this if the council so wishes.
Okay, that would help immensely because they just always overlap with something else. So, okay,
Yeah, I have all my paperwork at home about last year's meetings, so.
you got some momentum there.
Yeah.
Okay. So the motion would be that Counselor Al Beddoes be appointed as the council representative to the Integrated Police Unit Regional Governance Council. And that I think I was the alternate, or I was appointed, you were the alternate. So in this case, I don't want to be the alternate. Do we require a backup? You need a backup?
Yeah, I don't think so, but it's always wise to have somebody there. So,
Okay.
I could bring Kevin up to speed. if
Okay.
need be.
So then the second part would be, and that Counselor Kevin Pearson be appointed as the alternate council representative to the Integrated Police Unit Regional Governance Council. Moved by Counselor Bateman, seconded by Counselor McMath. Thank you to the both of you. The only other piece would be that I think they're meeting fairly soon, so if you can contact Kevin Murdoch or staff can, they're looking for a meeting poll to set this up so that both Counselor Beddoes gets that and can participate in the meeting poll and send that off right away. Okay. So between staff and Counselor Beddoes, we'll get you looped in pretty quick. All right, all those in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. Okay, verbal reports, number 13. Counselor St. Pierre, take it away.
Well, like several of us, I'm not going to name names, they can name themselves. Our council was at the housing summit that happened in Vancouver last week. Not going to get into all the details, but we were also there with our Director of Planning, Mr. Paulo, and I think that was instructive for both himself and possibly Ms. Gray, but I think that's more, the planning part was more on him. I think it was really good to see all levels of government actually looking to work together, clearly wanting to do something about the housing crisis and actually offering some reasonable suggestions on what might be done. So looking forward to see how this actually plays out on the ground here.
Other comments? Counselor Lajeunesse?
Sure. So March 29th, I attended an online session hosted by the University of Fraser Valley on collaborative governance and Indigenous relationship building. In general, the message was we've come a long way, but there's still a ways to go. One North Island chief who spoke, and I can't remember his name, but he said that his people are treated as visitors to their territory. So we're a little further ahead than they are. On the same day, I attended the CRD Arts Commission meeting, and I asked staff to give me a breakdown of how much money's been awarded to Souk organizations. And it seems we're contributing more than we're getting back. So I'm going to be bringing that up at the next meeting, and following that, it may be worth a discussion as to whether we stay involved with that. Attended Don and Stan's send-off at Municipal Hall, March 31st, and at UBCM Housing Summit. I felt that most of the strategies proposed in the province's housing plan were well suited to urban centers where better transportation options, et cetera, exist. But fourplexes on every lot in Souk would mean a minimum of 8 cars per lot in many places, most places, because we don't have proper transportation here. But they do seem willing to listen to our perspective. And during the Premier's talk, I heard noises that sounded like there was going to be more money for infrastructure improvements for growing communities. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And that's it.
Okay, go ahead, Counselor Beddoes.
Yeah, along with, well, I should say the acting deputy mayor, whatever he was there too, but Jack's Brooks opening was there. Not as many people as I thought would turn up, but it was kind of a icky day anyways. So it was well received. On the UBCM Housing Summit, again, others were there. I found it was very short on any sort of details that we could run away with. And again, Councillor Lawson's comment that it seem to be geared towards big urban areas, cities, as opposed to what we would do out here. So I'm interested to see what comes down the pipe further down the line. A lot of people are concerned about overreach of the province and bypassing council. I think it's going to be somewhere in between. I'm looking forward to hearing something off. Again, it was for the send off for acting CAO and their building inspector, and it was nice and sad to see him go. Good guy for a long time. That's it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, a few things, not much. And I met with Andrew Moore and Carol Panalski from the Sioux Seniors housing and the request. It was a great meeting, you know, talked about sort of where they've been, where they're going. I asked them, you know, what's next kind of thing, and their strategies going forward. So we should look forward to them coming to council committee of the whole, making a presentation of, you know, they're still out there actively seeking more money to get their center built. They've got some interesting ideas that I think I think we'll have our eyes opened at committee of the whole if they come. You know, they're talking about building the ground floor and then getting that designed architecturally so they can add on to it later or something. So interesting discussion with them. I toured Sioux Point on April 1st. Interesting day. Toured around and see where they're at in their project, you know, to date, what have they got proposed? Very interesting, very happy. They seem to be happy at this moment with you know, the district and things that are going over there. So it was nice, and met several people who are using the facility as tourists. And raving about, you know, how much they liked it and being there right on the edge of the ocean. So I was there on an extremely windy, rainy day, and it was nice to tour around in the golf cart, as I'm sure many of you have in the past. And the last but not least was the official opening of the Jack Brooks Hatchery. I was joined by my fellow councillors, Megan McMath and Mr. Bateman, Councillor Bateman, I should say, Councillor McMath, Councillor Bateman, Councillor Beddoes, and Councillor Lajeunesse. And it was a great event, even though it was sparsely attended, I think, compared to what I was anticipating, you know, with buses and transportation all arranged, but it was a good event. So, and we missed you here, Dave.
Did you enjoy your hot dog?
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I had 2 hot dogs as well. That was a great day. It was overcast and threat of monsoon rain, so I think that held people back from attending. But Councillor Pearson did a wonderful statement on behalf of the district. I think he was reading your notes precisely, so, or pretty close. So you were there in spirit, and you know, I think you know, it was quite something to see each one of these gentlemen step up, the dignitaries on hand, and Director Hicks was such an integral part of that process. And the Premier was there, the ex-Premier, John from Langford, Luxford, and also Sioux, because his son lives and his family lives on Deerleaf, right around the corner from me in Within-Spit. And there was much applause extended to Bill Pednault and Alita Piers, and hat tips to the late Wally Vowles and Mel Hull and Pat Forrest, and lots of credit to the volunteers. And there were 480,000 fish waiting to spread their fins and fly shortly. So then there was the opening, as you'll discuss, the opening of the Hannah Day Playground in Sun River. I got to offer thanks to Mrs. Lajeunesse, opening remarks at the Sioux Philharmonic Orchestra, and she's promised that every one of us it'll be a rotation. So expect an invite in this 25th anniversary season. And yes, I also was at this UBCM Housing Summit, and it was very intense. There was an awful lot to unpack, is the current buzzword for things which are deeply complex. You know, the province's housing announcement came out on the Monday, and the conference began on the Tuesday. I think, you know, listening back to what Mr. Haldane said earlier. And the sense that the province is about to come down like a ton of bricks on all municipalities. In fact, as I read the discussion of the BC Housing Supply Act, which was passed in the legislature in January. And one of the key points is that the province will be looking at communities that are not falling well short of their housing needs in their housing needs reports. And they're going to look at maybe 8 to 10 municipalities. And, you know, maybe Saanich would be one of them. They're going real slow. Oak Bay as well. But here in Sooke, as we got confirmation from Mr. Powell a month or so ago, we are on track with 1,000 starts, housing starts in our, I don't know what the time, two-year future. And again, that there is going to be a 6-month process between now and legislation being firmed up and formalized. And the province will be speaking with UBCM and with local governments, and local governments like our own are saying, well, you know, we got it under control, thank you. If you look at the housing section in the OCP, gentle density, you know, it's all there. You know, it's all there. The continuing supporting small lot sizes to increase densification, particularly service lots with ground oriented buildings, close to transit, you know, all of what we heard is in fact captured to a large degree in the OCP. So yeah, it was a good time. It was fascinating and a little overwhelming, but hey, that's what we're here for.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you. Yes,
I just have one more thing. So the Sooke Philharmonic has the Don Chrysler Prize, and I attended that last night at UVic. And they had 4 young performers. There were 2, all pianists, and the winner gets $600 from one of the music stores in town, and second place gets 4. But the winner also gets to perform with the Sooke Philharmonic in October. And I attended that event last year and it was phenomenal. This kid was absolutely incredible. And this year, seeing the auditions, all 4 of them were amazing. I couldn't pick a winner, but the judges chose the first and second place, and they're both 12 years old. There was a girl and a boy, and it's phenomenal. So when that comes up, it'd be great to see everybody there.
okay, thank you. So thank you, Councillor Pearson, for attending the event at the hatchery. As you can tell, I'm still not over this cold, and I was in pretty rough shape on Saturday. And it would have just not been a pleasant thing. So thank you for being there and for sharing whatever it is out of the remarks that I sent you. I appreciate that very much. I was at the opening of the Hannah Day Playground along with Councillor Bateman and Councillor St. Pierre. And a really good turnout, about 100 or so for the event. And the sign looks great. And even the thoughtful touches with the daffodils planted is really nice touch by our park staff. So thank you to those who have made that happen. I think the entire Sun River water or riverfront trail is open again. There was some damage to one of the trestles there by a tree, but that's all been repaired and maybe some finishing work, but it's open again in case you get queried about it. Like all of you, I was also majority at the Housing Summit, and I have pages of notes and also a lot of questions because I was looking for answers to these questions to roll out over the presentations that we had. And they're still not there. So for me, I think it'll depend on, and I look forward to hearing more about what the legislation that is being drafted is going to look like. What will consultation with local governments look like? Or is it more, in some cases, we're doing this webinar, you can sign up and attend and we're going to tell you all of this. And if there's time, we'll get a couple of minutes from all of you on this line. So I'm hoping it's not going to be that. That was helpful during COVID when it was a lot of information out and we needed to know what was happening on a week-to-week basis, but it's not a good form for consultation when it's that restrictive. It was interesting to me to see sort of the priorities at the top and then down to where it came to public consultation to not have a lot of robust thought or sentiment around that. And I guess it was always the sentiment that NIMBYism is the impact on why these housing starts aren't happening. I don't feel that's the case here. It's concerning, though, to limit public participation when we are all democratically elected. So in some ways, it's fine for federal or provincial government to say that, but local government, like to hear, oh, you don't need to do a public hearing. And to cut out the public participation piece when we are in the trenches with the public, I think is a bit dangerous, quite frankly. It just means we'll all be spending that much more time in the grocery stores, or need to find other ways of engaging, because I think the public participation piece is a fundamental piece for a healthy democracy. So I appreciate that there's a housing shortage for sure, but to cut the public out, I don't know, I'm concerned about it. I don't feel that will get you to the right outcome when you're doing that. So it's something for us to be mindful of going forward, and also what the changes of legislation look like. I look at it for some, developers, they build units, we build communities. So we have, in some cases, we're dealing with profit and short-term return to investors that may live out of country or elsewhere. We're living with our constituents day after day and are looking to make decisions that benefit the next future, that generation. If you've been here as long as I am, you'll see that generation showing up in chambers already, because the time goes by quickly. So it's an interesting one to see, and just where it sits and how that all shakes out. So yeah, there's a lot of pieces to play. I think some of the announcements were certainly made. There wasn't anything new in the announcement that I heard. Certainly we've heard pieces of it, and then it all sort of got bundled on the evening before the summit took off. So it was all fresh in that regard. But when I hear things like this will apply to certain communities, I was looking for a definition of what certain is. And it still didn't appear. When they say transit served areas can have up even more units, we have transit service, but it's not the same as transit service in an urban core area. So is it because we have transit service that this applies, or to what extent of transit service are you referring to exactly? So those are just some pieces that play, but further to Councillor Bateman's point, we did our housing needs analysis. It's kept relevant throughout the conversations that our staff bring forward. There's certainly areas where we look for improvements in development approval process reviews. But I think sometimes it's just to put more light or something, and to bring it forward in an open meeting so that the public can weigh in, and that means council. The public is weighing in through council, whereas eliminating that, I think would just cause another problem. So it'll be interesting to see where this emerges over time and how that impacts us. They talk about the increase in immigration, but there's no plan to house immigrants as they arrive. So it's fine to open the gates, but then are you looking to local government? Obviously they are, to come up with that solution, but we're not again at that decision-making table. And then also in terms of refugees that are arriving and continuing to arrive, like what is that plan? And again, it's local governments or concerned individuals like we have in Sooke that are stepping up to the plate there. So in some ways I feel I left thinking, are they even referring to a community like ours? Or are they focusing on more? So that'll become more clear over time. So it just leads me wondering there. I didn't get the sentiment of more funding coming. I heard many times about $1 billion that has been given out already for us to use in our way. I didn't pick up that there would be more, but I'd like to be proven wrong there, because I sort of heard over and over, you got your share of the 1 billion. I didn't hear about another $1 billion coming available. So I'm wondering about that. And then also the big one will be what the federal government does with the Community Works Fund. That one is critically important to us. And I hopefully I sincerely hope they don't treat it the same way like they did with the retroactive policing unionization costs where we were cut out of the circuit and given nothing. And hopefully we'll see something a bit more stronger. There certainly is an FCM advocacy position on that agreement, and it's a long time coming, but again, how much are we involved in the consultation of that is yet to be known. But what I heard in last year in December coming out of the House, this is the House of Parliament, from some MPs, it was just awful in terms of how they what they were saying. It was, I wish I was allowed to take in a notebook because I would write down that member's name, but you couldn't bring anything in for security purposes, obviously, for good reason, I suppose. I need a memory like yours, Councillor Bateman, for the ability to retain all those details. So I'll leave it at that for now, and yeah, more to come in another time. So thank you for those families that are watching and looking. Sea Parks summer registration opens at 9 sharp tomorrow morning. So you may want to look online tonight. The active guide is published and registration opens. It's going to go quickly. So for all of you that are looking for, or those beyond the webcast that are looking, it's something just to keep your mind to, because the it's busy and it's really hard to find childcare. That was not mentioned at the summit. So again, I won't go on about that, but it's a problem. Okay. Motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor McMath. Actually, I should revise that motion to adjourn and to reconvene the in-camera portion that did not finish earlier. By Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre.